Hi everyone. Hope you're excited about the 9.7.40 release. We certainly are. So we'll just go through all the new modifications, enhancements, and functionality that we've added during this release. And if you have any questions, contact sales@monitor24-7.com or shoot something in through our service portal. So let's start off with our layouts here. So you can see that we've changed the layout a bit, made it a little easier to read. We keep hearing everybody's comments and feedback and try and apply it with every release. So we've got all inline editing in here now, so we don't have to actually pop up requests anymore. We can So all of these changes are just happening straight in line. I'm not popping up a request or anything. We've exposed our milestones out here as well. So just remember, milestones can be workflow specific, or they could be global for an entire project, or you might not have any at all. It's just a great way to convey the current status of where a request is in its life cycle and manage your end users' expectations. Resolution timers, all of our timers are all accessible through here now, so we can just click pause, stop, and do everything. We don't have to actually go down to the service clocks and view the whole Gantt chart of the service clock and then stop it that way. Okay, we still have access to everything down in here as well, so the service clocks, your workflow and your different task filterings and such. Drag and drop files, so we can drag and drop files on here, no problem. So I just take a file, drag it, drop it, and there it is attached to the request. Okay, so we'll see, if I scroll down here, I can see all my different files that I have attached to it. All right, another thing is with the CC lists in here, we have the ability, let me just go show you, I need this one. So we have the CC lists. So we've actually brought that out to the forefront so you can better manage the CC lists and your communications channels and handle some of that out of band information that might result because people have sent in emails through CC lists and have brought those. So when that happens, they're actually automatically added to the notification list. And any outbound notifications sent for contacts, they will receive those. So we can actually better manage that through this whole user interface. As well, if they actually reply, we can actually aggregate all that information onto the request. So it's a great way that you can bring all that stuff back in and thread it all into the existing request and know who has actually done it. And the quick way to know that is that you'll see that the contacts are indented and resources are kind of outdented. So in this case, Jim Smith actually created this request and had CC'd Mary Lyles on it. So all of that was sent to the service desk and CC'd to Mary Lyles. So if Mary Lyles actually replies back to the email that she was CC'd on, we would recognize that and append it to this existing request rather than creating a new one. And there's an option on the inbox handler to handle that. So if we go here, I'll go through a lot of the settings in more detail. Okay. Now it's indicating that I have it suspended for email processing. That's just something I was testing out. So if we hit that, that'll turn it back off. This is a great feature that we'll discuss further later. But over here, there's a lot of different options on how to accept new requests. And we have treat email from contact with same subject line as request update. So that should also read that treat email from contact and anybody on the CC list. So basically anybody that's on the CC list as well, if they reply back with that request or with that same subject line, and they've been CC'd on the request originally, it will actually treat that as an update to the existing request rather than create a new one. So a lot of our clients were complaining about ticket bombs before. So that reduces, basically, you won't have a lot of requests being created through that cycle. It'll just be the one. Okay, so let's go out of here. Now we're going to go back over here. Oh. And I'll minimize this. Okay, so the CC list for visibility, inline editing. So if I click on this, it's going to give me inline editing, so I can inline edit my tasks straight through here. I have access to all my sort resources. So again, standard skills-based routing still applies. Everything is just it's right there, one click, and really easy to access. Responses, same thing. So any memorized responses, you have direct access to them. You get the preview by just hovering over. Okay, and your notification list. So here we've got Mary Lyles. If I need to include somebody else, it's really easy. Just type in their name, do the search, and away we go. Okay. There we go, I can finally type. And away we go. Okay, so now some inline editing. There's a lot of new features. Get in there, play around with it. The other thing that we have in all these list views is grouping the list, so we can actually switch the view to a bit more of a graphical view, or go with a what we call the grid view. So we call this the grid view, and this one is the list view. So if we go in either case, if I click on this option, I can group the list by anything that I have here. And then once I have it grouped, I can actually graph it. Okay, so now in the next version, you'll be actually be able to take this graphing and publish it to your dashboard. So, and that'll be 9.7.45, which will be out shortly. All right, so let's go here. You'll notice that this layout is completely different than the other one we were looking at, the ITIL 111, or yes, so we're looking at ITIL 1155, which is here, which the layout is completely different than 111. Now, how did that happen? That's happening because now, as of version 9.7.4, you can design your own request layouts. Yes, it's pretty cool. So now I can actually go in and lay out a request format however I want. And it's not just one request format. It could be a different request format for a different type of request. So it all depends on your request intake and the information you need to capture for that particular type of request. So in this case, we just have one where it's subject description, and I've put on the category, subcategory, and user impact. I've also included the service policy, so the service desk knows what the service policy is and still manage the timer and the timers and everything along with it, and resolve with FCR. So if I close this, first contact resolution. Okay, so now when I create these default requests, they come over here and they actually become part of my new request menu. So now I have even quick access to those types of requests that I've created. So I can create these very easily. So once I take it and I publish it, or design it and publish it, it's now very easy for the resources to create these requests because it's just part of the new request menu. These are templated requests that would be created. That would be, the request is there and you've actually created a template from it. And that was, we talked about that in a few different videos. That was several releases ago. So let me just show you the streamline request. Same thing, we got our file attachments, and I still need to do my search for my end user like you would have to, and then okay, and then as soon as we go here, notice how our service policy starts kicking in based on whatever we've selected. Okay, hit submit. And we're done. Okay, that popped up. I don't need to see that right now. Okay, so let me just go back. I'm gonna switch my view back. And Reset the group, and there we go. All right, so now let's go take a look at what we call, so I'll show you how we do this. We create these going through our forms/portal designer. So that's our service catalog designer, just been renamed so it more appropriately reflects exactly what you can do with this functionality. So if we go to the section templates down here, and here's our custom request layout. So we'll see this request layout, which is basically the request layout we just saw. And over here is all of our general request fields. So everything that is on our standard request, you can drag these on and design your own requests. And like I said, you can have as many as you want. You can make them contextual based on the type of request that you're actually intaking or generating. Okay. As well as down in here, we can actually put in our own CAPTCHA codes. So if you've got service catalogs that are published through anonymously, you can minimize the input by a CAPTCHA code and avoid bots that way. Audio, video, custom buttons, custom widgets. You want to put in your own access to RSS feeds or integrate some functionality with your intranet. All of that stuff's it's right there. You just drag it on and put it on. Okay, so when we're creating these default requests now, over here in the service catalog area, I just select this, the create default project form. So basically what we're saying is now we're going to create this as a default project form, and you can have any number of default project forms. So this is a default project form in Streamline Requests, and I could go create multiples. And it would just be contextual based on, it would actually apply based on the category, subcategory, possibly, but at the end of the day, it's all based on that new menu option and you selecting the appropriate one. And again, those can be published to the end user community as well. So if you want to just have a generic new request form that's very simple for them to enter, you can do that as well. Paint it up and brand it and do anything you'd like. Because again, it's all based on our standard HTML editor in here, which is pretty powerful, and you can pretty much do anything you need. Okay. So we'll go into the version 2 service rule engine. One thing I need to show here first, though, is that when we're back in this view, any of these left options here, if I do show left, what it's going to do is pop it up over on the left-hand side so I can see the details of the request on the right and any of this ancillary information over on the left. If I need to tear it away, I can basically tear that away, and that'll pop up the request in its own window. So, and again, this will work for any custom requests or any of our internal request layouts as well. All right. So let's go into our V2 service level rule engine. There's been a ton of enhancements around the service rule engine. So let's go here. We're going to close this off. Okay. Now we're going to go to service rules. So you notice right away, the first thing that you should notice is that we've gotten rid of that whole hierarchy approach that where you had to go from project to activity level, to category, subcategory, and so on. It's very flat because we're actually now allowing you to create rules across the entire project if you'd like. So in here, if I go to the criteria, I can see I can define my criteria. You can even go to the folder if you want. And down in here, you can do threshold percentages. And you can use priority. Whereas before you weren't able to, now you can. You can actually have different rules based on priority. So you can do threshold percentages based on priority if you'd like. So pretty cool. Down in here as well, I can have generic rules across tasks, names like, and then so if I had like contact input, contact email input, contact request submission, and so on, I could have all of those rules apply just by doing this. Anything that had contact in it would be, if I wanted just the first part of contact, I would just do this. Okay, so very powerful, kind of subtle, but it's very powerful options. Advanced criteria, I can just like in our workflow, it can use anything in our system. So in this case, let me just go and say where it's in list and it's user department. So this rule might only be active for any impact that's user department. Okay, and then access notifications. So if matched, I have two options. I can either process this rule or I can drop. So basically what the drop means is typically you're going to have the drop as one of the higher ranking items. So when it comes in, if it's going to process the rule. If it sees a drop, it's just going to get out and not move any further with the processing of it. And I'll show you a direct example in a second when we're migrating projects. Okay, down in here is a huge thing where we got the message template editor. So now you can create your own message templates and reuse them everywhere. You could before. This just takes it one step further, where you can have a template that integrates message center variables, which also integrates macro variables. So, and what that means is if I look at a view right here, okay, I can now design my messages using drag and drop and HTML, rich editing, everything in here, and reuse this message template elsewhere. So again, this one is just new request, so it's a new request template. I could just have a generic request updated and then you reuse the request updated template everywhere. So, and again, we've got, images, backgrounds, HTML, you can add in anything you want, all of our macro variables and so on. You can make them locale specific, okay, so multilingual, natively multilingual. So let's get out of here. And we'll get out of here. So that's the basis of the service rule engine. You'll see down in here too. Let me just go, I'm going to go over to one project so you can get the idea of how to migrate. So we've got the ITIL incident management project, and you can actually keep this active, work your rules, redesign your rules, keep the old ones active until such point that you're ready to go. Then you can actually just go over to the project and turn it to the type of service rules, and then it'll actually, once you've set up your V2s, you can go through and test them and then say, yeah, okay, looks good, let's turn it off, and then turn it on to V2s, and then it'll start using those V2s. So a couple of things. What we can do is in here, if I go to my V2 service rules or V1 service rules, so our old interface to it, I'm going to drill down here, and let's just say, what do we have in here? We've got time to resolve, additional information, send contact update, include. So if I do a contact email input, I should be able to migrate this rule. And now it's asking me, do I want to create a message template for it? Yes, because then it'll bring over the messaging that we had before. It'll create it as a template, and I may be able to use it elsewhere. Okay, so we've already created that template. So let's just go down to, well, here we'll use the customer survey. We'll migrate this rule. There we go. Okay, so the other one had already been created in a previous sample. So folder, category, subcategory, activity level, urgency, so on. We'll get rid of all of that. So we're making it global across the whole thing. Again, threshold percentage, we're saying specific to a task. We don't have any advanced criteria. We can say access and notifications. See how it created this template for us. If I do a view, there we go. There's our view. There's our template that was created, so we can actually take a look at this. Okay, and I'm viewing the message. I can go resource verbose. So let me see what the contact one looks like. Contact one is our standard contact one that we would send out to. So real easy, straightforward. Now that rule is migrated, and I just need one of them for everything. So I can save that. So all of these rules here, basically what you would end up with a template where one for each type of rule. So you have your -2 hours, right? So all those -2 hour rules at your different different priorities. Okay, you can set that rule up, and then set this rule up, and set the other rule up, and so on. And you should have, instead of all of these rules, you have like 7 or 8 of them, and then that would apply for the entire project. Okay, so now we have this rule. We go here, all rules. We'll see our customer survey. It's migrated. It's in there. I can go test the rules. Oh, so the first thing is let's talk about the drop option. So in here, and our processing. So in here we have exclude chat. So what we're saying in here is that with the criteria or actions and notifications, we want to drop it. So what we're saying is that, you know what, we're not going to actually process any rules if we actually have a chat. And how do we determine a chat is by the request sources interactive chat. So basically we're saying, well, if somebody contacts us through the chat channel, we're not going to send out any rules, which makes sense. You're not going to send them emails for that stuff because it's all online chat. So in order for that to actually, right now we would end up having processed 2 different rules before we got to the chat one. So if I wanted to actually drop that down, I just click on status and then I move the rule up right here. Click it and then move it up. And I can say save rule priorities, and there we go. So anytime chat comes in, we're just going to drop processing of that rule for any rule. So down in here, if I want to actually go edit templates, I can do view templates and edit those templates. Okay, and then anywhere where that template is referenced, obviously, it's going to apply. I can go and test my service rules as well. So if I go over here, I'll do all rules. I can do, let me just do it. Request number, I2, okay, and task simulation. I'll do something real basic, like just do incident report. Okay, which is request open. And then I run the simulation. And it's basically said this rule is going to get processed. Okay, so it's great if you have a lot of time-based rules. You can actually see which ones are going to be processed based on, you know, your date and time and the request number. Let's close this down. Hit the hyperlink. Okay, so there's our V2 rules. A lot in there. Ton of functionality. So, and our templates over here, so our new from templates. Again, let's just go take a look at one of these templates for a second. Let's do request updated. So it's all drag and drop and formatting, so we can format, use any of the menu options up here to format and align and underline, bold, everything. Insert HTML, labels, and so on. So you can basically do pretty elaborate branding for your messaging, and it will greatly simplify your message management as well. Okay. Now let's talk about going in through the service portal for a second, because I just want to mention a couple of things that we did surrounding our service queue. So within IncidentMonitor, there's a concept of a service queue, and if you come back to the project over here, and you say that your project actually uses queue ranking right here, when you have the queue ranking on, anytime you have a service matrix that's being processed and it's a resolution timer, it will use the queue ranking offset to determine the queue position of that person's request. So where that comes into play is if they're submitting requests through the service portal, the end user is submitting requests through the service portal, and you want to convey back to them kind of an anticipated time of when things are going to be done, because we're queuing all those inbound requests. We can actually do this. If I go to my requests as an end user, I will see where they are in the queue. Okay, so I know that this one's the second one to be processed in the queue, and this is the 6th. And that's all based on your queue ranking and obviously time and that kind of thing. So again, if you wanted to actually prioritize the processing of, say, executive management, well, you can actually use your queue ranking offset in your service matrix to actually place them in the queue higher. And where that as a resource, you will see that if you come over here and go to the View Service Queue option. You'll see the items in the service queue this way. And if I click on this, that's going to pull out the next, auto retrieve the next items for me. So the resources don't have to go through and read it. They shouldn't be going through and reading it. They shouldn't be wasting their time reading requests, because a lot of people want to cherry pick and take the easy ones. They can use this option and auto retrieve from the queue, and it'll retrieve the items out of the queue based on the priority that you've defined through the service matrix. Okay, so just a bit of a different concept, more of a telephony concept, and a more structured approach to managing your queue. Okay, so another thing with the contact, let's go back and look at those enhanced forms for 1 second. So one other thing we've added with the enhanced forms, if I come down here to software service and I go to software licensing, I've set up this form that actually has the KB documents associated with it by default. So a great way you can actually define your own forms. So this is another request form that I've created. And we've attached the KB document, so I can, and the KB document selection will be contextual based on the default subject and description information that I've added into the service catalog. So it'll come up, and by default, it's giving me documents that are relevant to this text. And as soon as you start typing in, it'll give you different documents. How about I just do. And we'll get the different documents. All right, so now let's go to the email processor. Let's just talk about a few things in the email processor. So if we go back over to the details on the email processor, we've added a lot of functionality and options to the email processor. So if we come in here, so one thing right away is you can turn off. So if you're going through a suspension of mail servicing for whatever reason, maybe you're going through an upgrade or what have you, you can say turn on the suspend email processing, and then have your options of whether you want to delete received emails or keep them. Okay, and then if you want to keep them, do you want to notify? And then you're going to say message template. Okay, so if I do regular text macros, or I can do message template, and then select my message template down here. And in this case, where it's suspended, so I'm going to use the suspended template. And again, I can go in, take a look, edit it, do whatever I want, and so on. Okay, so we've got that. Plus over here, we've added all your options. So now, as the one I mentioned earlier, the treat email from contact, you should probably make sure that this one's on all the time. And then stamp sender's email, store original email messages attachment on the request. These options should probably be on all the time. And as well, you have all the different options that were kind of system level options are now being treated as a per inbox type option. Now let's just go through here. So we've got the suspend, what we want to suspend with, send administrative alerts. You should always have that on so that people know, your administrators actually receive notification when emails couldn't be processed for whatever reason. Our categorization, you can do the knowledge base auto categorization, handle your signatures. Okay, so if you want to strip out the signatures, sometimes the signature might actually skew your knowledge base search results, so you could remove the signature. Okay. Here you can actually enable your response locators. So again, you can do that on a per inbox basis. So you might want to actually, in here, if you have the reply marker, if you put that as part of your message template at the very top, and when they hit reply, it'll actually capture everything above that reply marker. So you strip everything down below. And those are pretty much just the new items in there. So we'll just hit that and save. Oh, okay, so there's close message threshold as well. And do this and save that. There we go. Okay. So yeah, it's indicating to me that it's in suspend mode. So if I actually go back here and turn that off, then it will just set it. So the other one that I had that was forcing an update on me was the close threshold before accepting responses. So now you actually can specify, you know what, if it's 5 days, so we'll accept responses for 5 days on those closed thresholds before we actually, so it has to be greater than 5 days, and then we won't accept any responses. So it's a great way you can actually handle it where if when we send out the message, it's been closed, you don't want them to be able to open it, then you can actually just set this to 0, and then they won't be able to reopen a request. They would actually have to open a new one by emailing it. All right. All right, and last but not least, we'll talk about some of the enhancements we've done to our integration and opened up our API quite a bit more for everybody so that we can, now it's real easy to integrate IncidentMonitor with basically any third-party apps out there. So let's just go talk about our kind of no-code interface first. So we'll go to Data Exchange, and I'll come in here. So we've got the project and then what we call partners. So if I look at this partner, basically all this has got, we've gone through this before, is basically the endpoint that we need to go to, and then if we have any user ID, password information that we need to, and what request property we're going to use to know to actually send to this partner or not. So as soon as the external reference number gets populated in this case, we're going to start sending over to AT&T based on the events that we configure within the partner exchange window. So, and if we look at the properties for our Rogers, we'll see that we actually have a different property, which is an extended attribute or a form field that we've added. So when it's populated, then we know to actually send over to Rogers based on these events that we've configured. So that's a bit of an overview. We've gone through this in great deal in previous videos. There's also information online in our help about the help videos as well. So let's just go take a look at the concept behind this is that you use our semantics. So we have a kind of a structured XML layout that you describe your message with. In this case, we're just doing an XML message that we're going to send out. So we're doing placeholders with our macro variables all the way through. Okay, and then we actually, here we have a response type as XML. We can actually map back their external reference number. In this case, we're saying it's an attribute, and then how it's actually mapped within their XML response. All right, and again, so we'll look at a JSON message, and this JSON message is got a lot more detail to it. So we have what type of container we have. So in this case, it's JSON container. Remember, these are our XML semantics that you're using to describe your message. So really, it's all. I'll show you where you access all this information in a second. So it's request headers. And then, so it's always kind of in a collection. So we have a collection of request headers, and then our one request header for authorization, another request header for content type. So the other end knows that we're sending up a JSON message. In here, in this case, we have attachments. If we have an HTTP post or an HTTP method defined to it, we can specify its own URL as well. So again, we've run across some applications and third-party apps that require that how we update a request requires a different URL than how we require or send the attachments. Now in our world, you can actually do it all in one kind of RESTful call, send the attachment, request, everything all
bundled together, and we'll be able to decipher that and just extract it all in one single call. Others, not so much. So anyways, and then down here, the JSON message. So you lay out your JSON message and then just use your macro replacements in here. So we'll parse this out. So in this case, you can see just standard JavaScript array syntax. We'll preserve all of that and do the replacement at runtime with all of our macro variables. Okay, and then again, out here, we can do our response, tell it what type it is. It's a JSON string, and how to extract that information. So again, we can actually capture application level error codes using this status. So when we actually go look at the queue will actually display to us application level error codes, because down in here we can actually have what accepted values are as well. And again, we have in here we've got another type of container and how we're going to process it, all right, based on the URL, applying the external reference number. So we're doing it, and it's defining a comment, and the comment is extracting the selected task description. So we can do selected task description, you can do the request transcript, many different options in there that based on what information they require on the other end. Okay, and that would actually be, you can define that just in the XML. So you can see the selected tasks. So in this case, it's just got one task. So you could actually do a list of tasks that you'd actually want to compile into that body area right here. All right, so that's basically the standard. Now let me go, I'll show you the, this one actually has some selected values and error information, I believe. We've got our, yes, so we have the validate success. So we know if we receive an update through the status, that's fine. Otherwise, we display the error message and we know we have an error. So you can actually describe what your selected, your valid success values are. Now, remember, this is actually at an application level. So this would be the response that you're receiving from the other end. So again, it's basically you describe it all in the XML semantics. We take care of it for you, and we'll make sure that all of that information is reflected in the queue if there's an error. So you can actually go clean up the error, retry the option, retry the request, and let it go. Okay, so where do we find all this great detail of information? So the first place we're going to go is we're going to go to the directory, go to our IncidentMonitor install, and if we go to manuals, so we have API documentation. Okay, so this has got all the details. This doc will have all the details of, we'll take a look at this in a second, our web services interface, but communicating with business partners. And it's got all the details of this data exchange, how to define JSON messages, XML notations, all the way through. Okay, so, and there's a ton of samples for varying types of requests. So if there's something in there that we don't do or you just don't know how to do, give us a ring. If we can't do it, we can actually make slight modifications to the semantics and the syntax of the XML to make it happen for you. So that's about it on that side. And then what we also have is, I don't know if anybody ever knows, we have our object library in here as well. So this gives us the overview of all of the objects in the system. The two that you're be most familiar with would be the user services type library. This is what you're going to use more in custom events within IncidentMonitor. And you get your whole object list here. So this is the stateful interface. So you actually basically there's common semantics of retrieve and persist all the way through, and then retrieve different collections of objects that are on the object. So if we go look at the request object, you can see here there's several different object types or collections of objects on here, and we can drill down onto the members and see the members. And so you'll see there's persist assets, retrieve all tasks, retrieve assets, retrieve. So standard semantics all the way through for all of our objects. They're always going to have the persist, retrieve, and then a persist contained object, persist and retrieve contained objects. so that it'll create collections of those objects. So that's our stateful interface, and then the stateless interface gives us our scalability as the monitor's 247 business services factory. So that's what sits on the app side, on the application side. This gives us our channel independence. So the other thing we have is our web services API. So in here, this gives us all the, right now, this is all of our APIs that we have within IncidentMonitor. Okay, so if we come down here through our web services, and let me just go to the request ASMX, it'll list all of the methods that are published for the request object. So they'll look very similar to what we have. It'll look very similar to what we have within the user services object. Now it'll vary a little bit, but it will be very similar. So let's just we'll go to a retrieve, and in here we need a request object. So I'll just do 1155, and then the project ID. So that's what we call our surrogate key. So within IncidentMonitor, everything always has an underlying ID field. So we can extract that ID field pretty quickly. So if I come back over here to the Windows application, let me go here, and I'll just let's go to project requests. So I know that ITIL I1155 is in the incident management project. So I can just select one of these projects, and I'll say export requests. And then if I come down on here and I do an export, I do my project ID, I'll add that column, and then I can do a preview. There's my project ID. Okay, so it's -21474833634. So if I take this value and I just type this 21474833634, and I want all fields, so I'll just put a false in there. And interactively, we're going to get our response back. So there's our response back. So we get this and all of this. So it's a great way, nice way you can actually see how you get the contact is laid out as a separate XML object or element, and then all of its details underneath, request attribute, and then so request attribute values. So there's a collection, and then each individual one underneath. So it's a standard way that we do it. So it'll always be the value. So if the underlying is request attribute value, then you'll have values out to denote that we've actually, the plural denotes a collection of them beneath. And you'll see even down here with service clocks. So, and then a service clock returned. So just the one service clock. So everything you need to know about the request is returned at that point. Service catalog, and then any ACLs that we may need on the other end for the end user, so we know the end user's privileges. Okay, that's about it. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact us through our service portal. Everybody has their logins, and make it a great day.